So I finally read an Elmore Leonard book. Seems to be one of his well-regarded works. I love crime fiction. It's a budding interest of mine as a reader. I've read a lot of the classic authors from the start of the genre. And I have read many contemporary works already. Not that this is exactly contemporary. Came out in 2012, but you get the point. And people seem to like this book. It's got almost a 4 out of 5 on Goodreads, 4.2 out of 5 on Amazon. And on both sites, of course, that's out of thousands and thousands of reviews. What would I rate it as? 2.5 out of 5, I'd say. It's an adequate pass-the-time book at best, for me. But why such a mediocre score from me when major critical voices and outlets all admire Leonard as a master of this form? Well, mostly because the concept is so unbelievable. But it's not just that, it's really hokey, it's cringy. So let me give you a sense of that by just reading the back cover. A world-class gentleman felon. Jack Foley is busting out of Florida's Glades prison. A side note, yes, the very first word in that blurb is misspelled. On Amazon, at least. Jorld is a word in Old Norse. I don't think that's what they were going for. Anyway, back to our gentleman felon. He's escaping from the prison when he runs head-on into a shotgun-wielding Karen Cisco. Suddenly, he's sharing a cramped car trunk with the classy, disarmed federal marshal, and the chemistry is working overtime. And as soon as she escapes, he's already missing her. But there are bad men and a major score waiting for Jack in Motown, and the next time his path crosses Karen's, chances are she's going to be there for business, not pleasure. Just look how bad this cover is that I've been scrolling past while reading that. Yeah, it matches the concept, because it's that ridiculous. I don't think it even works as a throwback or attempted throwback to, old school pulp covers, if that's what they were going for. No, it's just really bad. But back to the concept. A woman is a fully fledged U.S. federal marshal. She hunts criminals for a living. And by the way, she just happens to be, in her physical prime and model level hot. And she dresses to accentuate that too. She walks around in very expensive and, form-fitting business suits despite the nature of her job. And she gets kidnapped at gunpoint by 2 convicts and ends up with one of them in the trunk of a car as the other escapee drives. Jack Foley and his partner are not the kind to kill an innocent person, so they're going to ditch her as soon as they can and continue on with their escape. Jack Foley, by the way, is middle-aged. At no point in the novel is it indicated that he's particularly good-looking or in great shape for his age or anything like that. He's, however, very sweaty, smelly, and grimy, having climbed through an underground tunnel in the Everglades to make the prison escape. But in the short time these two have together in the pitch-black trunk of a car and making small talk, these two make such a connection. There's such chemistry between them that afterwards, neither could stop thinking about the other. On a personal level, nothing to do with their professions. And when it comes to that latter part, we have the benefit of the most predictable plot twist ever. She gets assigned to hunt these guys down. So again, this is what the entire book hinges on, is you finding this believable. Think about her perspective. This threatens her entire career, even if he's true to his word and lets her go. You let yourself get kidnapped by 2 cons? But she's so, smitten isn't the word, more like intrigued by this mysterious felon, this guy who's clearly her dad's age. Like, for instance, he uses a phrase so out of date, he has to explain to her what it means. Because it's from his day, before she was alive. Elmore Leonard made a lot of money from Hollywood. They liked optioning his books, including this one. But this ludicrous premise here might be why they cast George Clooney in the film version. But in the book, the character Jack Foley is no George Clooney. I mean, there's just no work was done by Leonard to justify the acceptance of this concept. That this young woman at the height of her hotness, and who is a dedicated professional, is practically tempted away from her career, or at least highly distracted, by the guy that kidnapped her at gunpoint. I mean, even if they were in the same generation, I would find this too much to swallow. It's just such an obviously, desperate attempt to set up this sexy cat and mouse game. But then the generational aspect really throws it in the toilet, especially in the book. I never saw the movie, so I'm sure they handle it a little bit differently. I already mentioned casting George Clooney, and I looked this up. He was only 37 when this movie was made. And Jennifer Lopez was 29, so basically a 30-year-old and a 37-year-old. That's really different from the book, where the ages are unspecified. I would say it's more like a 30-year-old and a 55-year-old, maybe 50-year-old at best. And so I think the producers or scriptwriters wisely shrunk down the gap here. And actors, their job is to make us believe things that aren't real. So even if they had mirrored the book here with the casting, the actors would have had a chance to convince us, right? Through their acting, there's chemistry, there's something real. In the novel, that all has to be done in the writing, and there's just practically nothing there. I mean, it is paper thin. To me, this came off as an embarrassing middle-aged male fantasy. Like the sad 50-year-old guy at Twin Peaks who thinks the 22-year-old waitress actually finds him charming. And what really surprised me is I don't see this observation, although it doesn't have to be correct, anywhere. Not that I could read all the reviews of this book, of course. And as you can tell, that's my central problem with this book. If you can't buy the central premise, then the rest doesn't even matter. And the funny part is that the rest is pretty good. It's everything I would have expected from an Elmore Leonard novel. The characters, other than that mood-lighting will they or won't they aspect, all the characters are fine. The dialogue's punchy, just like you'd expect. The bad guys, I mean the real bad guys, not Jack and his buddy, who are bank robbers who really kind of sort of never hurt anyone. They're nasty, and the entire story builds up to a really great climax, where I was on the edge of my seat, so credit there. And now for some spoilers. Yes, on the do they or don't they, of course they do. And this is one night where they put aside their, dueling agendas and hook up. The thing is, the book wants to have its cake and eat it too. On one side, it's supposed to be this sexy thriller, so them hooking up, it's like a James Bond thing. Ooh, we're on opposite sides, we're trying to kill each other. Not in this book, but you get it. But we're gonna do it anyway. Pure fantasy. They got away with that a long time ago. It worked in those movies, but it just seems silly in a more modern tale. But then the have your cake and eat it too aspect is that they're also supposed to be in love, I guess. I mean, this is based on a 15-minute ride in pitch black. This is basically Leonard's Bridges of Madison County. Like, there really is this aspect of, do these two want to just get away from it all? She abandons her life, he abandons his, so they can be together forever. Completely unbelievable. And then in the third most predictable plot point ever in this book, wow, guess what? She has to bust him. Wow, no way. And despite other cops being around or whatever, of course they have this one little tender moment, what could have been. Again, no way. Something I didn't mention is he's determined to never go back to prison. He escaped prison during a 30-year rap, right? So he was going to be an old man if he waited that out. So he's dead set on not going back, and then the book completely wimps out once he's collared. He should have died. That at least would have been more emotionally effective, because he was tempted to go out in a hail of gunfire rather than get arrested. And it might be a reach for me to criticize the writing here, like Elmore Leonard has sold 1 trillion times more books than I have. But you know how this could have been so much better? First of all, shrink the age gap, but even throw that aside. Have the two meet up and hook up before either one knows who the other is, like in regular life. And then it turns out that he's a bank robber, she's a marshal, she's put on his case, etc., etc. That gives you the dual benefit of, one, giving them time to actually fall for each other, so you make that much more believable, and two, speaking of making it more believable, there's no obstacle at the start. She's not risking her career by being into him, and he's not risking life in prison. But they both will end up doing those things for someone they're already invested in. That would be much more plausible, and still have all that same tension that the book was based on. So anyway, yeah, I'm hoping Leonard has much better than this, and I'm assuming he does. I will find out at some point, but for now, on to other things. Thanks.